What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Around the Table Sports. So, super excited about this video because we're going to be talking about Alabama football. And not only talking about Alabama football, but I got to talk to my guy, Ricky Green, who is published by Touchdown Alabama magazine. He does work for Touchdown Alabama on YouTube, Tide Talk Sports, you name it. My guy, Ricky, he's got you covered with Alabama Crimson Tide recruiting, practice notes, after the game, you name it, he's got it. He does a great job. And not only does he do a great job on his analysis, on all of that, he's a really cool dude, man. Anytime these bigger podcasts, these bigger YouTubers are willing to give someone like myself an opportunity to ask them questions and then give me advice, I think that's pretty indicative of how they view the field and that they're really just in this so that we can all kind of grow together. I'm talking Ricky Green with Touchdown Alabama, of course, the J-Boy Show, an Auburn podcast, who the guy's really cool. I mean, he's been great for me to ask questions to. Super funny on Twitter. One team, one podcast, an LSU Twitter, LSU-based podcast on Twitter. Super fun to interact with on Twitter. They're great. And the Sports Podium podcast. Guys, if you don't follow any of these, go ahead and check them out. I just put y'all on some really, really high-level sports content, specifically in the SEC. I think if you follow the people I just named, you're not going to be lost on the most up-to-date, best SEC news, and I bet on that, right? I bet a lot of money on that. But let's get into the video, man, because I got to talk to Ricky about a video that he put out. He sent to me, and we kind of got talking back and forth. And it was the Alabama Crimson Tide offensive line. And look, I think it's very easy when we think of the Alabama Crimson Tide this year, we kind of get lost in all of the sexy numbers that the Crimson Tide offense is putting up. And hey, understandably so, right? When you got a quarterback like Mac Jones who's 80% almost on throws 30-plus yards downfield, why wouldn't you be talking about that gaudy stat? We're talking about a kid who we didn't even know if he was an NFL guy playing his way into the Heisman contention. Mac Jones is one of the hottest names in college football, and I haven't even begun to start talking about Najee Harris, Jalen Waddle, who rest up, get well soon. All prayers up to you, but you're still going to be a first rounder because you're the most intriguing offensive player in the nation. Then we have Devontae Smith, Trey Sanders, like Brian Robinson. The names keep going. John Metzie, Devon Baker. But here's the intriguing thing, right? I just named about Mac Jones' incredible stat, right? And here's the thing with Mac Jones, is he might have the best deep ball in the country. When he lets that thing sail, it's magic, right? You do not get that great of a deep ball without a stellar offensive line. And that's the whole thing with Ricky's video the other day, was talking about how great Kyle Flood and this offensive line has been top to bottom. And, you know, he hit the nail on the head because this offensive line is the best offensive line group in the nation. Kyle Flood is one of the most underrated coaches in the nation. And it shows when you watch Alabama on Saturdays. I want to pose you this. The Alabama Crimson Tide played the number one defense in the nation, and this isn't an inflated number one. This is a Georgia team that has got NFL players everywhere, man. I mean, this is a swaggy defense, right? They're super loaded. They're super, super loaded. And the Alabama Crimson Tide was able to put up 400-plus yards passing. It's because of that stellar offensive line that was able to nullify the most dangerous defensive front in college football. Bama was able to nullify that, and that's very, very impressive because the offensive line play for Alabama has been absolutely necessary, especially on a year where you do not get the full offseason with a newish quarterback. I say newish because Matt got some time last year. We can pick hairs as to whether or not that quantifies as a new quarterback, but I'm going to quantify it as a new quarterback. Point remains. The reason Alabama has been so successful, despite all of the disruptions to an offseason, has been that stellar offensive line play. And the one thing I would add, and Ricky and I talked about it on Twitter, but the one thing I would add to his video is just look at it on the recruiting trail. Right now, Alabama has the number one tackle in the nation, who's the fifth best player in all of the nation. The number two tackle, who's the sixth best player in the nation, the number one center, the number two guard in the nation. When it's all said and done, Alabama could have an entire starting offensive line in this recruiting class alone, right? The Alabama Crimson Tide offensive line is really, really spectacular right now, and it shows, right? When you watch the games, it shows in recruiting. It's why Tristan Lay and the Brockermeyers were talking about how 12 of the last 13 Bama tackles have been drafted very high in the NFL draft. It's recognized, right? It's absolutely recognized. It's the whole reason the Alabama offense is as deadly as it is they have the best offensive line in the nation, right? It doesn't go much further than that. Staying on the topic of Alabama, it's not going to take too much longer, but when the season started, I was very high on Will Anderson, and he has done nothing but prove me right? Will Anderson is going to be a monster. But there are two other freshmen on that Alabama defense that are spectacular football players. I'm talking Malachi Moore, and I'm talking Brian Branch. Now, over the summer, I talked about Brian Branch and how I thought that he was too good to keep off the field. And even then, I heard he was the favorite to start, but I kept hearing rumblings about Malachi Moore. And as the season got closer, I noticed that the positions flipped between Branch and Moore. And so I wondered, okay, well, did Branch lose the spot? And from every whisper I got, they were like, no, Branch is playing out of his mind in practice. Malachi is that dude. And it's very early in their careers. But Malachi Moore reminds me a lot of if you mixed Minka and Eddie Jackson. That kid is going to be phenomenal. And he keeps getting better every single week. And it's getting to a point of, I don't know who you throw against on this Alabama defense, because say what you will about the defense, but the DBs at Alabama are spectacular right now. From Surtain to Job to Branch to Malachi Moore, they're really, really good. That's about it. We'll see you around. Be sure to check out the podcast coming out tomorrow. That's about it. See ya.